And this is my presentation on officer's duty. The central idea behind my presentation is that police should be legally obligated to protect the citizens of this country, and that without that obligation, certain safeguards should be put in place both for the police officers and for the citizens. Recently, a very polarizing issue here in the U.S. has been a police officer's obligation to serve and protect. The issue has come about after a school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, in which the department's failure led to the deaths of 19 citizens. This incident brings up the concern of whether police officers are obligated to protect the citizens of this country. And even though it would make sense for a police officer to protect you, they have no obligation, as the Supreme Court ruled that the police have no specific obligation to protect you. I would like to propose a solution to this issue by suggesting that the police department should be legally obligated to protect the citizens of this country, given the resources provided by the government. Police should be both empowered and required to protect the citizens of this country. So let's first understand the issue. The issue is that police have no obligation to protect you. There is no piece of legislation that obligates an officer to protect an individual. And the lack of this legislation has prompted several court cases, with two examples being Warren v. District of Columbia and DeShaney v. Winnebago County Department of Social Services, with both cases being overruled on the presidents that police had no obligation to act. According to Justia.com, Warren v. District of Columbia was a court case of appeals case regarding 4 different individuals in 2 different cases. The first case involved 3 women in which the police department filed the wrong code for the state of emergency and did not follow the basic procedure. This led to all 3 women being abused and raped for the next 14 hours. The second case involves Wilfred Nicole, in which Nicole was assaulted by an assailant, leaving his jaw broken, and when the police arrived on the scene, they ceased to obtain any information about the assailant. This led to Nicole being unable to file any legal action against the wrongdoer. According to fine law, the Court of Appeals ruled that the police have a general public duty, but no specific legal duty exists. Moving on to the second case, DeShaney v. Winnebago County Department of Social Service. According to Justia.com, DeShaney v. Winnebago County Department of Social Services was a court case filed by Melanie DeShaney, in which her younger son, Joshua DeShaney, was allegedly being abused by his father, who had custody of Joshua after the divorce hearing in 1980. Following the alleged abuse, TDS and police made several visits to the residence, but found no such evidence against Joshua's father. A year later, 4-year-old Joshua was admitted to the hospital in a near-fatal coma. Ramona Cyrus from the Prospect Board states that he was left in a vegetative state after the incident. So, why aren't the police legally required to protect you? Well, in the event that an officer would require backup, they are not required to take action in that situation. An example being Uvalde, Texas, in which the Texas Tribune states that it was the deadliest Texas public school shooting so far. Another reason is that each department is different, meaning they all have different protocols from one another. This would mean that even though we might think that they're not doing anything, they're just following the department's basic protocols. Since not all departments or officers are different, that means they might not have the same manpower or resources as one another, meaning that they can't act as immediately. In defense of the Uvalde, Texas school shooting, Star Telegram states that an individual has no duty to come to the aid of another, and that principle also extends to police officers. Now that we've addressed the problem, let's look to find the solution. The solution that I propose is that if officers are to be legally obligated to protect an individual, then we should give officers temporary immunity while they're protecting themselves or another individual, and that immunity can be reviewed by a board if it would ever come to question. Second is to give departments the money and the resources in order to carry out their legal obligation. And the third is to create a nationwide protocol for use instead of having state-regulated ones. All the money and resources needed should be allocated to the departments by the U.S. government. In order for there to be compromise, there must be a compromise in order for these officers to be obligated to protect our community. In conclusion, police should have the obligation to protect the citizen while having the resources necessary to do so. It is unreasonable to force an officer into an unwinnable situation while not giving them the resources needed to combat these freak scenarios. I would like to compromise by giving them what they need to protect this country. I understand if you have your doubts, but just think, if you were to be harmed, wouldn't you want somebody who could and should protect you? And that's the